that here we are, the post-Thanksgiving show. The Bears back in the win column. You found us on a Tuesday night. We do appreciate that. YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook presented by SportsMockery.com. We are the Club Dub Podcast. Eric Druve and Kevin back at it again. And we get a win to talk about this week. Bears get back on track. Death taxes and how I like to say it, getting right versus it wasn't pretty. The offense stinks no matter who the quarterback is, but they get a win. Clock management was great at the end of the game, 16-14. Bears on top, made for a nice Thanksgiving with the family. No arguments after the game. No bad blood. No one was upset. Everyone ate their meals and had a good time and enjoyed the Bears win. How are you guys?
You know, that game is just so hard to take anything of significance away from just because it's the worst team in the NFL you're playing. I get it. It's on the road. It's a short week. But at the same time, you just know that the Bears are the more talented team here. In spite of all their injuries, they're still better than the Lions. And to barely eke it out at the end with a 28-yard field goal to escape 16-14, it really didn't change the minds of anybody. Yeah, it was a win. It was nice to get a win on a holiday. But at the end of the day, this doesn't feel like a team that's poised to, maybe turn their season around at the 11th hour.
It doesn't. And first of all, hope you guys had a good Thanksgiving. I know that that was look, I enjoyed that game. I know people thought it was boring. I thought it was fun. Look, sloppy football is still it was hilariously entertaining. Anyway, look, good for the Bears to pull through because that was not an ordinary week, right? Short weeks are already tough as it is. We all know all about the distractions the Bears faced. Mm-hmm. Matt Nagy went through hell that entire week, and the Bears were able to pull it out. They had a lot of injuries. They lost Roquan Smith in the first half. They were still able to hold down a pretty feisty Lions team to 14 points at home. And look, no, it doesn't change any outlooks on what the season's going to be. I don't think, and it shouldn't. But it wasn't a win that I would just dismiss. I think it showed the character of this team. I think it showed that they still play for their head coach, which may not mean anything in the long run, but for Matt Nagy's prospects in the future, I think it was a good showcase of what kind of value he brings to his locker room and being able to navigate, honestly, a mess. And look, I thought the offense was actually okay. The Lions were able to shut down the running game, and Dalton was pretty efficient, throwing the ball. They didn't convert that into a lot of points, but they had an end zone interception, which, if you look at that play, Cole Kmet was wide open on a wheel route. That would have been a touchdown. And then they missed a field goal. So that's, possibly 10, at least 6 points that they should have had in addition. So, it's one of those games where the offense, I think, was better than we have seen, lately. Definitely better than what the Ravens game for sure. So there were signs that, look, it doesn't matter at the end of the day, right? Andy Dalton's not the future of this team. It's got to be Justin Fields. But there was, for at least some of the other options on this team, like Cole Kmet, Darnell, Mooney, some of those guys, and the offensive line, I thought they played pretty well. And look, if Fields comes back healthy against Arizona and they're able to build on that schematically a little bit, maybe you never know what'll happen.
Bryson tuning in from YouTube. Appreciate that, man. I know he's been on the last couple shows. Locker room definitely needed that win. Drew, you made a really good point about the offense just looked more efficient. Andy Dalton was efficient in this game. He's now had the 3 most efficient quarterback games for the Bears this year. I don't know in that order what they were, but again, almost 400 yards of offense against Detroit, only 16 points. This team really struggling to score touchdowns at the end of games. And I know that they had red zone opportunities. The reason they probably could have punched one in at the end of the game, they decided to run the clock out, did the smart thing, kicked the chip shot field goal, win it. That was actually, honestly, phenomenal clock management from Nagy and Dalton in that game. A positive note that we'll hand to them in that one. But listen, it was a get-right game. They won. There's no easy wins in the NFL. It doesn't matter if you're playing Detroit. They needed this win. And Bryson, I like your point because, listen, this was a team that you will hear from a couple of the players later on in the show that were very upset about this reporting getting leaked and fans booing. And we've been hearing this for years from one player in particular who continues to talk down on the booing and things like that. And we'll hear from Eddie Jackson in a little bit, but this was a huge win for the locker room. And a lot of these guys that won't even be here next year. I was looking up and down the wide receiver route or the wide receiver free agent market for next offseason, and Demir Bird's on a 1-year contract. Marquise Goodwin's on a 1-year contract. Allen Robinson's likely not coming. This is going to be a completely different wide receiver room next year. The fact that some of these guys were outspoken, and especially Darnell Mooney saying, we just had to block out the noise and go out and play, and boy, did he ever play. Darnell Mooney looked great. The drops, I know people are going to complain about the drops, but listen, guys, bigger picture. Darnell Mooney is going to be a nice number 2 wide receiver in this league. Back-to-back 100-yard games, he looked great.
No question. I mean, Darnell has been the best receiver on this offense. Even before A-Rob went on the shelf with a hamstring injury, he was playing that way. He was more productive. He was getting open more often, creating more separation. He's really blossomed this year, and I think the inconsistencies of at quarterback have sort of overshadowed that, unfortunately. But you expect, as Justin continues to grow and get more comfortable at his position, he and Mooney have a chance to be quite a dynamic combo because of Mooney's speed, his ability to get open down the field, and Justin's outstanding deep ball accuracy. That's something you just sort of like to look ahead towards. But the fact that Mooney has continued to progress in the short and intermediate game, something that wasn't always his strength as a rookie, is a real encouragement, because if you can get some nice complementary pieces around him moving forward, presuming A-Rob is gone, of course, then you definitely have something going in terms of explosiveness, in terms of finally these guys getting open more often, which has been a problem for this offense going on a number of years now. So, and then you've got Cole Kmet, who's had maybe his 2 best games in the past 3 weeks, or 3 games, I should say. So he's coming along. I really wish they would use him more often in the red zone. They haven't really targeted him a lot, especially inside the 10. I think he has only 1 target inside the 10. So they really got to try to get him involved with that 6'6" frame and use his strengths more often, which has been another problem with this offense. So their young pieces are coming along. That's encouraging to see. You want to see them continue to grow over the final 6 games. Hopefully Justin can stay healthy and continue to improve. And, they're still in the hunt. You always like to hold out that hope, but
they are
at this
there.
point, you just want to see progress from the young guys and see if they can eke out a few more wins.
Exactly. And look, I think we talked about this on a show maybe a few weeks ago, but while there isn't any realistic hope for a playoff push for this team this year, learning how to win is still important for a lot of the young pieces on this offense that are going to be here next year. Mooney, Kmet, maybe Jesse James, considering the level of chemistry he's developed with Justin Fields. Larry Borum, maybe James Daniels if he's re-signed. Tevin Jenkins eventually. I mean, there a lot of this roster, especially on the offense and certainly on the defense, we know Jalen Johnson, Roquan Smith. These guys are, some of them have been here. They know how to win, but some of these guys are in year 2 or year 1, and they need to learn how to win together. And stacking, first of all, positive performances like we've had with Mooney. Cole Kmet's been looking really sharp the last several games as well, getting open more often, winning his one-on-ones, catching the ball, not a lot of drops. That's encouraging. These players, if they're able to stack performances and then start winning games, that is the next step in that development that we got to see for the rest of this team. Because we talk about Fields. Obviously, Fields' development is the most important thing for this franchise. But these other players are going to be here with him, and they got to be in that same mindset, same common goal, etc. And that is, we saw them. You look at some of the plays that were made on that final drive, 8 minutes, 30 seconds to drain off the clock at the end there. And Cole Kmet was involved. He got a first down. I think Demir Bird, who's not a big part of the future, but he was involved on a couple of key first down receptions. He could be one of those guys that you bring back on a middling depth deal, in the off season, because why not, right? David Montgomery, obviously, Khalil Herbert chipped in a little bit. Larry Borum was pass protecting that entire drive. That was a go out and win it drive. Cairo Santos nailed the final field goal. That was a good step. Now, if they're able to, build on that, and if they're able to go out and compete against the Cardinals and the Packers on the road, those are hard games. They may not win either one. They probably won't win either one. But if they're able to go out and at least compete, show that they belong on the same field, that'll be important, because I don't think, to our point, we like to joke about being in the hunt. Sure, it makes for exciting chatter, right, if they're able to eke out a game here or there. But it really is about next year. It really is. But anything that they're able to put together this year as far as positive performances, contributing ideally to a win is going to be huge.
Yeah, and Darnell Mooney already has surpassed his total yardage from last season, and he still has how many more? We still got what? 7 more
16.
games to play, 6 more games to
6 more
play.
games to play, yeah.
So there we go. I mean, he's on pace for 1,000 yards. I think he'll probably get there, barring any injuries. And the thing is, the Bears are not known to really have, wide over the last decade or so. There's not been many guys who are super explosive receivers. They're catch the ball, they're consistent. Alshon Jeffrey was like this. He was, one of the franchise leader in yards. I believe he's top 3, might even be top 2. Just a guy who caught the ball, couple of key plays here and there, but he never burned the roof down, never burned past guys. Darnell Mooney looks like a guy that could grow into that, and that's exciting because there's not many guys in the league that do that now. Those are coveted receivers that help blow the tops off of defense and opens up everything else. It's cliche football speak, I know, but the Bears haven't had those guys. Brandon Marshall wasn't really a burn the defense type of guy. Bernard Berrien's another guy I think of that was a long way back. Again, a couple deep plays here and there, but Darnell Mooney really just he's young and he just seems to have the speed on his side. We've seen explosive plays now in back-to-back weeks, long pass plays, including this one from Dalton. I thought this was a perfect throw and catch. The 2-play touchdown, 66 yards in 2 plays.
As the Bears start at their own 31, down the middle, deep shot, Mooney's got it! Inside the 20, and a big play to start the drive from Andy Dalton.
Once again, Andy Dalton just getting outstanding protection. Really good route here by Darnell Mooney. He leans up on him a little bit as he gets vertical and then separates across the field. 4.3 speed. He's capable of doing that. And then guys that are this fast for a quarterback, they're really a luxury if you get the ball.
There you go. You hear Aikman literally say it right after the fact. The guys with that type of speed, that's the difference. The Bears have a very good pass-catching back in David Montgomery. They have one of the best running back rooms in the league when used properly, I think. With Montgomery and Herbert going into next year, that's a huge positive. That's going to be a strength of your team. Defensive line is going to be a strength of your team. Offensive line, if these 2 young tackles, like everyone's saying, can continue to grow, you're starting to see some of these draft picks flow into place. But they're still not there yet, and that brings me to a point of I want to talk a little bit more about Andy Dalton first, and then we'll get to my point about some wide receivers that we probably saw this weekend in college that I think this team really needs to give a significant look after. But do the Bears, would they have more wins under Andy Dalton? Does this even matter to you guys? Do you think this team is better off with Andy Dalton as the quarterback, or would have more wins than they do now? I guess this is a common topic. I personally, I was in the Fields camp altogether. I think they would. Just watching Dalton kind of play, though, the last couple of weeks, I think there's probably another win or 2 in there if he's the starting quarterback of this team.
So when we were talking about this whole plan for development for Justin Fields, and I think the idea was always Andy Dalton's going to start, Fields is going to be on the bench and learn, and this is going to be mostly Fields' year. At some point in the year, Justin Fields this is going to be Dalton's year. At some point, Fields is going to come in and try to get some of that experience. Clearly, that changed. However, if I go back to every appearance that Dalton's made, right, the offense looked okay functioning-wise in week 1. Obviously, they got blown out because that was the debut of Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay, and that was a blowout for sure. But the offense had signs of functioning okay. He played efficiently overall. Then week 2, he gets hurt against the Bengals, but led a touchdown drive on the first drive and was looking strong on the second drive before he got hurt. Reason to believe they would have won that game no matter what, right? With Dalton starting and playing the whole game. Cleveland was obviously a disaster, but at the same time,
they weren't winning that game regardless. Cleveland
they probably weren't winning that game. Yeah, they probably weren't winning that game, but they probably weren't getting blown out 26-6 with 47 total yards, right? And again, we can talk about obviously the game plan and Fields' first start, everything, sure, but they're probably looking better. You're probably feeling better about the team, and maybe they're feeling a little bit more confident going into some of these future games. Obviously, they beat the Lions in week 4. They probably beat the Raiders in week 5. They were just overall physically dominant, and Fields didn't really do anything in that game except for really one throw.
Yeah.
That was to seal the game.
That was a defensive game for sure. Roquan had a big game against Oakland. Yeah.
Exactly. It's more about, I think the two key games that I'm going to focus on this one is the Pittsburgh game and the Baltimore game. I think both of those games, I think San Francisco feels it about as much as he could. The defense really failed him on that one. But I think the Pittsburgh game, Fields didn't really take off until the second half. And in the Baltimore game, Fields struggled for sure. So I feel like had Dalton been the starter for those two games, at least from a consistency standpoint, maybe the Bears are, maybe instead of losing 14-3 at halftime in the Pittsburgh game, maybe they're losing 14-10 or something, right?
Sure.
So maybe there's a little bit more consistency and they're able to at least eke out one, I would say possibly 2 wins additional if Dalton has been starting the whole year. But again,
the reason I bring this up is because those extra 2 wins right now, look at how many teams in the NFC are 4-7 and 5-7, like or 5-6, 5-7, 4-7. They're all kind of in that mix for that 7th spot. And the Bears only have 2 wins against NFC teams this year, and both happen to be against the Lions, so it doesn't matter. That's why I bring it up. Eric, what do you think?
I totally understand where you're coming from. You could make a case, especially earlier in the year in some of those games, that maybe Dalton might have made it closer. I don't think they win in Cleveland. I don't think they win in Tampa Bay. I don't think they beat the Packers. So you can take those off the board. Pittsburgh and Baltimore, it's more interesting because Dalton knows those teams so well. And you think that because of that familiarity and the lack of being intimidated in those environments, that he would be able to play well against them. So in that case, I do agree with Drew that it's more possible he might have been able to beat them had he played through those games entirely on his own. But at the end of the day, all you can do is hindsight is 2020. Dalton got hurt. Fields came in, struggled early, then started to play better. And the Bears decided to stick with him. I don't begrudge that decision. I think in the long run, it's going to benefit him. And so, you wish that they might have been able to eke a couple of those games out. I still think Justin deserved to win that Pittsburgh game, hands down. He played well enough to do so. So if you just flip that win, the Bears are 5-6, and they'd be even more into this, crazy NFC playoff picture than they already are right now. So, yes, I do think they might have been able to eke out at least one more win, but it wouldn't have been a huge difference to their schedule.
And you think about the experience that, look, I was in the start Dalton camp in the beginning, and I like the way the season's gone overall for Fields' benefit. This experience is going to help him for sure. I just think that if I look at the experience that Trevor Lawrence is getting this year, and I think that this experience that Zach Wilson's getting this year, I don't find it helpful for their development. They're struggling. They don't have a lot of support around them. Their teams suck. Their coaches suck. And, they're playing for their lives a little bit. I don't know if that makes sense, but Fields has been, I feel like Fields' kind of development path has been a little bit better supported, as strange as that might seem to some Bears fans who are listening. I feel like that he's been a little bit better supported. Obviously, Mac Jones is in the best environment possible, but Fields, I feel like this experience has been positive for him. Now, as I've been saying, I would love to see it translate into some wins, because when you see the performance that you're putting in as a rookie translating into a win, that's huge for your development. But to Eric's point, I think overall this season has been a positive for Fields, and I think the way some of the supporting cast that'll be here with him next year have also blossomed, like Komet, like Mooney. That's going to be great to see as they kind of build this future together.
Shandy start on Sunday. I think absolutely he should start on Sunday. I don't see any reason the Bears should be rushing Justin Fields back from cracked ribs. No reason at all. We know how tough he is. I know he's going to want to play on Sunday. No. No. There should be no reason he should be playing on Sunday, especially if he's even somewhat injured. Leave him on the sidelines. He's been sacked 32 freaking times this year. Leave him out there. And I know the Cardinals are down J.J. Watt. That doesn't mean they still can't rush. I mean, they got a really good defense. I'm leave him on the sidelines. Give Andy the shot. Let Andy keep playing. If he's especially coming off that game against Detroit where he played pretty well.
I totally understand where you're coming from. I probably agree, because rib injuries can be very tricky. especially he's got a hairline fracture. So if he takes another nasty pop, which he's been prone to do ever since that hit against Clemson, it could turn into a nasty break, and that can make things even worse. So, I want to see him play. I know he wants to play. He's a tough motherfucker. We all know that. I'm not questioning his toughness at all, but this is about doing what's right for him in the long term, and maybe giving him an extra week to see if he can heal up just a little bit more before playing in Green Bay. That might be the wiser decision, and just give Andy, who can get the ball out faster against that good Cardinals pass rush, and see if maybe you can get one at home, and then maybe you get some momentum going into Green Bay. And, Fields played pretty well against Green Bay. I mean, he had a couple of down drives, but, he played with some confidence against them last time. So if they can go in with a win, he might be feeling, much better and ready to go in what will be a pretty big game.
Would agree. And I think, the Bears trainers and doctors, they would never put Fields in this precarious position. I don't think his coaches would either, where if he's, 50-50, they'll rush him out there. But if he's healthy, or if he's good enough to go, I think it would be, first of all, I think the coaches would have no issue playing him if the trainers feel he's good enough to go. And quite honestly, I think it would be a good experience for him, because that's a tough team. It's obviously one of the top seeds in the NFC. It's a home game. In theory, it's a big game for the Bears playoffs chances, mathematically. It would be a good experience for Fields to go out there and play if he can. Of course, they shouldn't rush him back, to your point, Kevin and Eric, about, if there is any sort of lingering doubt about his ability to survive that game, then obviously they should sit him. But yeah, if he's cleared, play, because it's good experience. These are the types of games that you hope he'll be playing in next year, and you don't want him to be facing some of these for the first time next year. This is a good time if he's able to face them this year. And so it's a home game. It's cold weather. You assume maybe that a desert team will come in and maybe have a little bit of challenge with the cold. I don't think it's going to be that cold on Sunday, though, so maybe it's not that much of an advantage. But you in theory take some of that risk, and hopefully you hope that the coaches have a game plan where they know that his rib injuries are a risk here, and so hopefully they're able to devise a game plan that helps.
If he's in even an ounce of pain, I don't want him playing. Period. Yeah. I even if there's a difference playing when you're 4-7 and you're playing for a playoff spot, or this is a playoff game, you're playing for a bye. There's differences. This is like Aaron Rodgers, and I know toe injury is a little bit less serious than rib injury. But, he's going to keep playing, because guess what? The Packers look like the best team in the NFL right now. They're playing about as well as I've seen them play in years, which is pretty incredible. Like they've really turned it around. They look like they're playing great. So there's a difference. So Fields is in that spot. Obviously, you're gonna play him. You're playing for a playoff spot. You're playing for seeding. But when you're 4-7, you're right on this bubble, and this is where the Bears always find themselves. They always find themselves in this. We could take one route. We could take another one. They're never super up here or down here. They're always in this spot where they have to make these tough decisions. But again, you're right. To your point, I don't think that the coaching staff, this is not me assuming that Nagy and Laser, those guys and the training staff is going to hang him out to dry with an injury. They're not going to do that. They're not horrible people, but I just think Andy should start. Get rib injuries. This is a couple week injury to fully heal. Give him a couple weeks. On the other side of the ball, Kyler Murray sending out a cryptic tweet of Thanos coming back to life, coming out of his cave. An Endgame, I think, right? That's Endgame, or is it an Infinity War? Is it Endgame?
I think that was Infinity War.
Okay, maybe it was. I don't know. I saw Endgame and I didn't see Infinity War, so I kind of got lost. Good movie though. Anyway, it looks like Kyler Murray tweeted out that GIF. Looks like he's going to be good to go on Sunday. He hasn't played in a couple weeks. He's had some issues. So this automatically gives, the dynamic offense that the Bears thought they were going to see against Baltimore with Lamar Jackson. Now they're going to see it against Kyler Murray in a little bit of a different facet. But two very similar quarterbacks. Game plan should be about the same. No Roquan Smith this week, potentially, with that hamstring injury.
Problem. Yeah, no Roquan Smith. That is a big problem. I mean, Smith was everywhere on the field.
We don't know, though. He could play. We don't know. We'll get the injury report tomorrow.
No, totally fair. And it's a hamstring injury. It's going to be tricky. Even if he does play, he may not be moving at 100%, and they're going to need him at 100% to contain Kyler Murray and those those legs are something else, man. The way he steps, it's crazy. He's like doing DDR, like on the field. It's pretty wild.
He's so fast. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. So, it'll be a challenge. I don't know if DeAndre Hopkins is expected to be back, but the secondary is toast anyway. Although I will say that Eddie Jackson being back did help, with coverage a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
On Sunday. And again, I know it's the Lions, I know it's Jared Goff, but look, I ripped Eddie Jackson a little bit about his tackling before his injuries. Don't care about the tackling at this point. His coverage and his instincts are clearly so much more important, and a lot of that stuff that just wasn't showing up in the box score that started to show up when you had Tease Tabor, for example, in coverage back there. I mean, good Lord. So Eddie Jackson, I am sorry. You are obviously very valuable to this team.
But if you played like Minkah Fitzpatrick, it would be a lot better for all of us because guess what? That's how you force turnovers. But I get where you're at. Yeah, without Eddie Jackson, I mean the secondary is brutal, man. They are brutal. It is good to have number 30 or number 4 back. I forgot he changed his number. Number 4.
Keep praying for Jalen Johnson's good health, because oh my God, what would they be without him?
I don't want. They'd be the Lions. They'd have Darnell Mooney matching up. The Lions tried everything. They threw about 5 or 6 guys on Mooney. Not one of them could stop. Mooney was burning past every dude in that game. It was so funny.
He beat 5 different guys for at least 11 yards in that game.
The Lions were like, all right, you get him. Okay, no, it's like the Spider-Man meme. They're all pointing at each other like, oh, do you want him? Do I want him? Like, nothing worked. So hopefully, and that'll be the same. Obviously, D-Hop will be on, or Jalon will be on D-Hop. But after that, there's a couple other guys still on that team that are,
AJ Green, Rondell Moore, Andy Isabella.
Rondell Moore is the one I like.
think Moore is going to be a problem.
Yeah, he's good, man. Another Big Ten wide receiver, which is a great transition into Big Ten football because if you guys this week, well, first before we get into that, predictions: Bears, Cardinals. Who do we got in this one?
Cardinals.
I'm going to take the Cardinals too. I think Cardinals will roll with this one. I think 31-13, something like that. The Bears just can't score any points, but Big Ten football, if you guys watch this weekend, you guys are like, oh, why the hell are you guys talking about Michigan, Ohio State? We don't care. I'm going to tell you why we're talking about it. So these two guys have significant ties to the Bears, Ryan Day and Jim Harbaugh. Not only that, but Jim Harbaugh looks like a pretty damn good coach. He had a game plan that hard-nosed, run the football, Bears-style football that looks like he ran it all over Ohio State's defense that has a couple first-round picks on it last weekend. And I'm also talking about this game because of the wide receivers that Ohio State has. And I know I've referred to this in a couple other episodes, and I know the Bears don't have a first-round pick, yes. But goddamn, they need to get one of those guys, man. They need to figure out how to get Chris Olave. I'm serious. They need to figure out a way to do that because those two, Chris Olave and my fault, I totally forgot the other one. Garrett Wilson, yes. Those two guys are unbelievable. Yeah. They're burning everybody. They're NFL wide receivers in college, and they're both just absolute studs.
Reminds me of Jalen Waddle last year. I mean, speed, size, decent size, but speed, route running, there's just no covering them at all.
What do you guys think about this as a head coaching candidate? Who would you rather have? Would it be, if you had choice, would it be Harbaugh or would you take Ryan Day? Who have you been more impressed with so far?
I've been covering this for a while. I totally understand why Ryan Day would be a choice for the Bears. His prior connection to Justin Fields, he's gotten Fields to play like an absolute superstar, and he's actually worked in the NFL. He was a quarterback coach at Philadelphia. He was a quarterback coach at San Francisco, so he does have NFL experience, and he's also younger, which, you always have to look at as a head coach. But college coaches always scare me, because you just don't know if they're going to be able to connect with NFL players who aren't going to be all about that rah-rah stuff that college coaches are known for. So in terms of his offensive prowess, I'm into it because you need this offense to be fixed so bad.
So bad.
But honestly, I'd go with Harbaugh because he has NFL experience. He's won in the NFL. I mean, he was a winner all but in three of his 4 years in the NFL, he went to a conference championship game. So he knows how to handle a winning team. He knows how to build around a quarterback and make a quarterback successful. He knows how to build a strong staff. He did it in college. He's done it in the NFL. I understand a lot of people don't like him because he's not prone to winning big games down at the college level, even though he just won a huge one. But at the end of the day, he knows how to build a winning program on both levels. And I think that's what the Bears need most. Somebody who can build that program that is able to win consistently, which is what they've been lacking for a long time.
Yeah, the key thing that I thought you said there was obviously building a winning program, having a team that's always ready to play, which Michigan is, and San Francisco always was. But it's the ability to build a staff. I think that is so key, especially if you're going to have a CEO type of head coach, right? Not one who's going to be like the Sean McVay or Kyle Shanahan type, who's play caller, QB guru, and etc. You're going to have a CEO like a John Harbaugh and have them just run the team. And then you have your staff and you trust your offensive coordinator and coaches, defensive coordinator and coaches to worry about the day-to-day, the tape, the scheme install, the concepts, etc. All of that, you need to be able to build a strong staff. And I think, after, you think about what he had in San Francisco with Greg Roman, and he had, Vic Fangio. I mean, awesome staffs, and clearly had a lot of success there with Colin Kaepernick and etc. I think that's a huge piece of this, and it's a good point. One of my buddies from high school, actually, he covers the Bears for On Tap Sports. His name is Luke. He made this point about Kellen Moore, who I love as a possible, at least offensive mind head coaching candidate. Obviously he's being groomed for big things in Dallas, but one of the things that you have concerns about is maybe his ability to construct a staff, because what connections does he have, right? Probably none in the NFL. So that's one of the big things, clearly that's hurt Matt Nagy a little bit, outside of being able to convince Vic Fangio to stay. His offense, and maybe getting John DeFilippo to get into Chicago. I think he's struggled a little bit to maintain those strong staffs. And it's one of those things that are underrated until you need it. And so that's one of the things that I think Jim Harbaugh does bring value. Now, does he have staying power with the Bears? Who knows, right? Who knows how he'll get along with the GM or, the McCaskies and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, he ruffles some feathers, but, he's a damn good CEO. So that's what the Bears might need.
Well, this is what Eric and I were talking about before you hopped on, Drew, was if Ryan Pace, and all signs are pointing to Ryan Pace staying in the Bears organization right now. That can change over the next 6 games, but things with what he's done draft-wise, yes, he's missed on a few things, the obvious ones that we don't need to touch on, but he's drafted a lot of good talent, and he's put together a good roster for the most part, and he put together a championship-level defense for about 2 years there. So if Ryan Pace isn't fired, are you against him being put up to maybe, giving him Ted Phillips' job, then hiring a new general manager? I know that he would still have, say on most of the roster and things like that, but it does seem like that's the direction the Bears are headed. And every insider, everyone with connections to Hallis Hall and 1920 Football Drive is saying the same thing. They all love Ryan Pace. They think he does a good job, and that's up for debate. I know every Bears fan's going to have a different opinion on that, but he hasn't done a terrible job with the player scouting department, and I think that that's valuable.
Yeah, I think, look, it's so binary in the NFL, right? You either are amazing or you suck, right? I mean, that's just how it is, and there's no nuance. And I think the Ryan Pace conversation is very nuanced. And so if he stays on as general manager and gets a third shot at head coach, or second shot, depending on how you see John Fox, which I actually think it really is his second real choice, that one's a little bit more controversial, I guess. But if they put him upstairs, right, in that separation role with where Ted Phillips is focusing on the business operations and Ryan Pace focuses on the football operations, and he hires a general manager, and that general manager has final say on the roster and all things that are happening on Sundays, I think that's fine. Look, Ryan Pace is, for all intents and purposes, he's a decent scout. He had, before they had to start robbing Peter to pay Paul to cover up for all the roster deficiencies because of the Mitch Trubisky miss, that he was doing a good job with the salary cap, right? He wasn't taking insane risks. Yeah, he was doing a bad job with draft picks, but and mortgaging draft picks. But overall, I thought his handle on the football operations side was pretty decent. And to all the things that you just mentioned, the McCaskies love him. They love what he did with Hallis Hall and the new workout areas and all that kind of stuff.
As if like there. No one else could have done that, though. I don't understand. Like, I don't know.
It's a hard projects, man. I mean, you think about like the emphasis that I don't know if you recall how badly the Bears struggled with some of the dumbest injuries back in the day. Soft tissue, things that were pretty terrible, under Lovie Smith and a little bit under Mark Trestman, in the Phil Emery era. They brought analytics in a little bit more. They brought in a whole bunch of different types of sports science and nutrition wings into Hallis Hall, which didn't exist. These are all things that matter. And sure, I mean, to your point, anyone could have done that, but he did do it, right? And he bought what he learned
right, he did.
And installed that, and it has helped the Bears. I think, honestly, a lot of the Bears' injuries have been more unfortunate than kind of the dumb stuff, but he has brought a lot of value to the Bears. And I think that if they promote him to a role that oversees football operations and let someone else take control of the roster, I think the Bears will be better off for it.
Comment of the week. Chris, appreciate you tuning back in, guys. Love all the comments rolling in, by the way. We're talking Pace and Nagy right now. You're going to be hearing us talking about that. But we're also talking a little Big Ten football because the Ohio State-Michigan game had a lot of implications on the line for the Bears. Not only are we talking Jim Harbaugh and Ryan Day, we're also talking Ohio State wide receivers. Justin Fields obviously playing with some of these guys last year. The connections are there. Chris Olave is he's unbelievable. Reminds me a lot of Terry McLaurin when he was at Ohio State. Yeah. He's got almost 1,000 yards this year. It's more than he's got to over 200 more yards than he did with Fields last year. He's got 13 touchdowns. He's averaging 15 yards a catch. His footwork is just, if you go on Twitter and just kind of scroll through the video, if you search Chris Olave and just look at the video section, I mean, man, him and Garrett Wilson both, they have the footwork and they're both going to be first round picks this year. Bears don't have one. Do you see any way they get kind of back up in there for a wide receiver? No.
They just don't have the ammunition to do it. If they had more picks, I absolutely think Ryan Pace would try to, pull something, but I believe they only have 5 picks, no first rounder. But the good news is this draft class looks pretty deep at the wide receiver position. They usually are, just because of the importance of that position to today's, offenses. So it's a deep group. There's a good mixture of speed, route runners, some decent size in there. So I think they're going to be able to find Justin Fields a weapon either in the second or third round and, come away with a pretty decent prospect. Remember, they found Darnell Mooney in the 5th. So they're capable of finding guys later on. And I think it's actually smart to draft wide receivers unless you're absolutely certain the guy is going to be a superstar. You don't really need to take a wide receiver in the first round. I'd be focusing more on the offensive line, see if you can buff up the protection or, reload on the defensive side, focus on the trenches. And once you start to control the trenches, then you can worry about the skill positions. And I think that's something that Ryan Pace took a little too long to learn at times. Mm-hmm. So I don't think they're going to trade up for Wilson or Olave. They're going to be long gone, but I do think they're going to have some options either in the second or third at wide receiver. So I'm not concerned about that. It's a question of what other position will they focus on in those first 2 rounds besides wide receiver. I think it's probably going to be, either an offensive lineman or a cornerback.
You got to get a corner. You got to get a cornerback for sure. And Brian Pace has shown that he's good at that. Obviously, with the Johnson pick, and Eddie Jackson before with the safety pick was solid, and I just think that if he's good at that, then this team needs to focus more on the offensive side of the ball early, and that's why I'd like to see them with their second round pick take a wide receiver. That kid from Purdue that everybody's talking about, I haven't watched him play a whole lot.
David Bell.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, everyone's talking about him. I watched him play when they were at Wrigley against Northwestern. He's got the NFL body, looks solid. But here's some of the free agents for next year and guys that maybe the Bears can target. I think Allen Robinson's as good as gone. You're not going to have enough money for Devontae Adams. Chris Godwin,
probably not.
I don't think he's going to want to play here. I think these two are guys you're looking at. Juju and Emmanuel Sanders. Emmanuel Sanders is quietly having a pretty good year for Baltimore as their number 2, and honestly, he's been switching with Cole Beasley for that number 2 spot. But I like Emmanuel Sanders. He'd be cheap. He's a little bit older. You also maybe Juju Smith if you want to go a little bit younger, coming off significant injury. But I think those are 2 guys that I have circled. You guys see anybody on here that you think that might be?
I would look at Jamison Crowder. I think he's one of the better slot receivers in the league. He hasn't been given much of an opportunity in New York, unfortunately. But if you pair him with Mooney, I think that would be a great combo. And I think there's another guy. Scroll down a bit. Let's see, where was he?
Jakeem Grant. I love it.
No, keep going. There's another one that his name's escaping me for some
reason. Josh Reynolds.
It's the guy from Dallas, Gallup, Michael Gallup.
Michael Gallup, yeah.
I think that would be another, high quality target. He's not a number 1, but I think if you pair him with Mooney, you would have a really nice 1-2 combination. There you go.
Yeah, there you
so,
go.
and I don't think Dallas is probably going to be able to pay him. So, because they got Cooper and they're going to end up paying CeeDee Lamb eventually. So, they're probably just going to have to sacrifice him, which is exactly what you want if you're a team like the Bears. He's not going to command top dollar, but which is, perfect for them so they can be a little more aggressive on his front.
And look, Ryan Pace showed the ability that, you can, in theory, remake a wide receiver room in one off season, right? I mean, 2018, he went after Allen Robinson. He got Taylor Gabriel. He went after Trey Burton. I believe that was the year they also drafted Anthony Miller, or was that the year after?
No, that was the same year.
It's same year. And, Miller, I'm still salty about that one, but, they took multiple swings, and I would say they were reasonably successful with 2 of them at least. So, there are plenty of options. You don't necessarily have to get a first round receiver. You can have a couple of, day 2, maybe even 1 day 2, 1 day 3 swings at wide receiver, maybe sign one of these free agents like a DJ Shark, one of those like up and coming receivers, or Josh Reynolds, who hasn't gotten that number 1 opportunity, but has shown that they can be productive. And look, Fields needs guys that can catch the ball and get open, right? He doesn't need a star. Like, yes, obviously you want a star, but he doesn't need a star. Someone who can get open and catch the ball. That's what you need. And as long as Fields is good, you assume he'll be able to deliver the ball. So that's what they need, and it shouldn't be too difficult to remake that position in an offseason.
Did you say DJ Shark, by the way?
Did
you say Shark? Maybe it came through my headphones as
I might have said Shark. I might have said
DJ Shark.
Nice. Honestly, I prefer that.
I do too.
Cooler name. No, this is the thing though. I think in the NFL you got to have a stud wide receiver at some point, and maybe not next year, but you're right. And the year after that, when you're really starting to compete, you got some more money on the books. Sure, but when you brought up CeeDee Lamb, Eric, because of the Michael Gallup thing, that's the reason I want the Bears. And I know that people have Kevin White flashbacks. No one, going top 10 and never really playing a game for the Bears, for Christ's sake. But CeeDee Lamb is the guy that reminds he is like the Chris Olave. The Chris Olave is the CeeDee Lamb of this draft. I know they're not going to get him, but I'm really hoping that they can find a guy that's like something like that, and if not this year, next year, because I really think they need to start focusing on the weapons on the offensive side of the ball. It just has to happen. It's an offensively driven league now. Ryan Pace has shown he can find running backs. You got running backs on deck for the next couple of years. Focus on the wide receiver position. Cole Kmet looks like he's going to pan out. I really think that has to be their position of need this year. Guys, keep those comments rolling in. We got Bryson, Miles. We also have Chris tuning in as usual. We want to get all those comments in. Ask any questions. We'll touch on those at the end of the show, as we always do our question, comments, and concern section. If we don't get to those too, those guys will answer them in their mailbags. They do that every week. You can find that on sportsmockery.com. Again, we are presented by sportsmockery.com. We're also presented by Pinwheels and Ivy, our guys that do the baseball show. They'll be up tomorrow night. Cubs still not doing anything. White Sox, actually,
no. Yan Gomes, man, backup catcher. Let's go.
Oh, they just got the kid from the Yankees, the 27-year-old kid from the Yankees, too, that outfielder. Oh, what's his name?
Oh, that's new.
That the Yankees cut?
Yeah, Yankees cut him. I mean, he had a good 2020. I don't know why I can't think of his name off the top of my head. Yeah, Clint Frazier.
Cubs got him?
He had a really good 2020 or 2019, and they cut him in 2020. So had a tough year last year. But anyway, listen to our guys Pinwheels and Ivy. They do a show every Wednesday, so they'll be up tomorrow night. And they'll have a lot more to talk about with that. But back to football here. It's a little happy news to end on before we get on out of here. I love this guy.
Mm-hmm.
Kyle Long is one of my favorite Bears of all time. The Chiefs activated him today. Kyle wants to win a ring. He signed with the Chiefs in the offseason. Just can never stay healthy. And this is the thing about playing offensive line in a team where you have to block 300-pound guys. We've seen guys. We saw it we saw Jack Conklin come back and immediately get hurt in Cleveland last night. We saw Elgton Jenkins tear his ACL. These guys have such a tough job, and playing offensive line in the NFL, you're doomed to get a lower body knee injuries and things like this. And I'm thrilled for Kyle Long. You don't just activate him to not play him. I think Kyle's legitimately going to start playing for the Chiefs, and I'm rooting for the Chiefs the rest of the way. I like them. If the Bears don't make the playoffs, the Chiefs are the team that I root for. So good for Kyle Long. Super happy for him. He's one of my favorite Bears of all time.
For sure. Yeah, I mean,
what about you guys?
Best wishes to him. Would love to see him succeed. It's been a rough road for him, man. I mean, you think about the way his time with the Bears unceremoniously ended after that disaster in London against the Raiders, and got cut and then was retired for a bit, came back, got injured. It's just brutal. So hoping he finds success, stays healthy, and the Chiefs are able to take him a little while, and he gets his first playoff win finally.
No question about it. Yeah, Chiefs quietly have won 4 in a row, so you're going to want to keep your eye on that. People were already counting out Mahomes. Kind of a mistake to do that, in my opinion. You can't really do that.
He still hasn't looked that great. He still hasn't. Even that game against the Raiders.
He hasn't looked that great, but he'll be.
We'll see.
He'll be back to full form, and I think the Chiefs will be right there in the thick of it once again in the AFC. It's what they do, man. It's what good coaches, and again, look at the playmakers they have on that offense. I mean, their defense really sucks, though. That'll be tough, but good for Kyle Long. We're happy for him. Question time. Got a lot of good ones today. I'm really excited about this one. Let's see here. So this one from Bryson early on in the show. Nagy gets fired. I think Juan Castillo goes.
Yes.
Yeah, and Juan Castillo really ticked me off earlier in the year with these illegal man downfield penalties. Cody Whitehair got like one in like 2 or 3 straight weeks. And it was the same penalty, same play type of thing, and they were huge plays. That can't happen. Excuse me. And then that's not saying that Castillo's not a good coach, but I think he's had a lot to deal with this year with injuries and stuff, and I think he deserves a lot of credit for going and getting Jason Peters. But that being said, new coach, new coaching staff.
Usually the case, yep.
Eric, what do you think? Yeah?
I would agree. He's probably one of the better assistants they have on the offensive side. Unfortunately, he just hasn't been good enough, like the entire staff. So I would not be surprised if he's cleaned out like everyone else.
Let's see. I'm on the David Bell train. David Bell in round 2. Yeah, I mean, if he's there, I think he got.
I don't think he's going to last.
You think he's first round pick too?
There's always a team, that'll be like that will fall in love with his tape and take a receiver too early. And look,
he's basically like Rashad Bateman, that guy who's probably going to drift into the bottom half of the first round, and then somebody, one of those winning teams is going to scoop him.
Exactly.
It's funny, when we first started this show, Rashad Bateman was on my wish list. We did a wish list for the draft, and Bateman was on there for me. Fields was obviously, I think I put Fields for 2 or 3 of my slots, and I got my wish, but it was Fields, it was Bateman, it was Slater, and I think it was just those 3 because Fields took up the other couple. But yeah, I mean, Bateman's now, he's playing okay. They're just not a pass heavy offense, but I think he's doing fine from missed the first 4 games of the year with an injury. So why not Chris Godwin?
It's gonna get tagged
too expensive.
Right.
Yeah, I just don't think the Bears aren't in a place to pay. And honestly, try selling him on playing here. I mean, new head coach. That's going to be a tough sell. It's going to be a tough sell getting a guy to play under a new head coach and a second-year quarterback, and it'll be tough.
It becomes that exactly, and it kind of puts to test that theory about will wide receivers look at the overall situation versus here's this quarterback that's there who's promising or is hyped and whatever else, and has an opportunity to make me a lot of money in the future. So if he wants to take a short-term deal, let's say 2-year deal from the Bears, play with someone like Justin Fields, who he thinks will grow and get him a lot of targets and catches and yards and touchdowns, and all of a sudden he's built up his value, twice over, maybe he takes that risk. But I that's a lot of faith to put in a second-year quarterback who you don't know. We still don't know what he is, right? I mean, and we probably won't know for a while. So at that point, it would just be based on hype and college reputation, which usually isn't enough for some of these guys to trust the future of their careers. Because Godwin's going to be 26 next year, so he still has, in theory, 2 more contracts to earn. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think Allen Robinson, honestly, is your best bet if you do want to try a long-term thing. But it's all going to depend on if he wants to be here. And judging from everything we've heard, it doesn't sound like he wants to be here. So.
His agent doesn't want him here. That's for sure.
Yeah, I know. He's very active on Twitter. Any free agent cornerbacks they should go after? There's actually a lot of free agent cornerbacks next year. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to look at the list. I kind of just glanced at it earlier this week, and I can pull one up right now.
Do you mind? Yeah, I haven't had a chance to look.
Kyle Fuller is a free agent. I would love to see him back. If you can get him on a decent deal. Let me pull this up. I believe this is the right one.
I mean, if you could somehow fork out the money for J.C. Jackson, holy crap.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So you got Stephen Gilmore, Joe Hayden. Obviously, Joe Hayden's great, a little bit older, but Kyle Fuller would be awesome.
Dante Jackson, I think, is a pretty solid player.
Agreed.
Patrick Peterson's, he's been kind of injured for Minnesota a lot this year. I don't know. And Xavier Rhodes, kind of having a comeback year. I know Indianapolis' defense looks pretty good, but I'd probably steer away from those guys. Honestly, I would love to see Kyle Fuller back. I think just having him back in the rejuvenated, spot, I think that would be really good for this team. But again, it's a money thing, and depending on what the Bears do, depending on what happens with Denver, do they keep Vic? Denver's now kind of they're in the same spot as the Bears. They're in this mix where they could make the playoffs. They still don't have a quarterback, but they, who knows what's going to happen there. So Vic goes. Maybe you try and poach him back, and he brings Kyle Fuller back. A lot of things can happen, but I would love to see. That's a guy I'm looking at for sure. And who did you say, Eric? Who do you want?
J.C. Jackson.
J.C. Jackson. Carlton Davis is another one I think might be a little bit underrated. So there are going to be some options out there, but cornerbacks are, pricey. So you really got to be careful about spending at that position.
Yeah. No Kevin King for me. I'm good. No Kevin King for me. Packers can have him. They'll probably let him go. They seem to have something in
Rasul Douglas.
The kid from Georgia too that they picked.
Stokes.
Eric Stokes.
Yeah.
Was I was singing his praises, and I love that guy. He's excellent on man coverage.
He's great.
And God, they're doing this without Jair Alexander. He's still not back, and that guy is elite.
Jair and Stokes and Darnell Savage is
ridiculous.
They got a really, really good secondary.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, none of that matters if number 12 leaves. So we're all hanging on.
Here's what's interesting though is Rodgers is obviously important to their offense, but they are so much more than Aaron Rodgers, more than I thought. Right? They're extremely well coached. They have a lot of talent. I mean, Jordan Love might suck, and if Jordan Love sucks, then
they're not. Their offense is nothing without Rodgers. That's the thing. But they are well coached, right?
But they are very well coached, and so I know we're not talking about head coaching candidates necessarily this episode, but keep an eye on Nathaniel Hackett, man. I mean, I know he's not calling plays, but that offense is so well coached. They don't make mistakes. They don't beat themselves. Yes, they have Rodgers. Yes, they have Devontae Adams. Yes, they have a star offensive line. But
if you're not sold on Nathaniel Hackett because of his Green Bay experience, then he dragged friggin' Blake Bortles to an AFC Championship game when he was offensive coordinator for Jacksonville. So the guy can get things done in less than ideal circumstances.
And they're without their 2 best O linemen. And wasn't the kid they drafted Myers, the kid they drafted from Ohio State?
They don't have him either.
I mean, that's
and the Rams couldn't do. I mean, you look at the Rams defensive line. You got Von Miller, you got Aaron Donald, you've got Leonard Floyd, who whatever, but they couldn't touch Rodgers for the most part.
Yeah, and that's without Bakhtiari, Jenkins, and Josh Myers.
They got gashed on the ground. I mean, it's unbelievable.
That's what I was saying. The
Rams linebackers are terrible.
Yeah, that's also true.
Right. Yeah, they've invested elsewhere at other premium spots for sure. I'm just saying that I think that's none of it matters if he leaves, but the Packers defense is playing well. But and we got in this conversation talking about cornerbacks. Kevin King's a free agent next year. I think he'll be gone. I don't want him at all. I don't think the Bears will even give him a look. But all right, we got a final take. Anybody got a final take tonight? I don't know. We talked about this beforehand.
We did not. Do not have a final take.
Who wants a final take?
Ooh.
Eric, you got a good final take in you?
You're putting me on the spot here.
Drew, if you got a good final take, I didn't write a final take. I did one last week.
I'm thinking about it. I might have one.
All right. I think I'll go.
Okay. All right.
I think I'll address the whole front office situation.
All right. Here we go. Eric with the final take. On the spot and no prep for this one. So this is going to be good. I'm looking forward to this.
Listen, GM Ryan Pace is probably in a murkier situation than Matt Nagy right now. Matt Nagy is as close to 100% gone as you can get. Ryan Pace, on the other hand, from what I understand, it's sort of a 60-40 situation that he is gone after this season because the McCaskies really like him and because he's also had some success recently with his drafts. Jalen Johnson standing out, Darnell Mooney standing out, Fields showing flashes. So there are arguments for him to cling to his job. It's a question of whether that talent continues to develop over the final 6 games. The odds are against him. And from what I understand is the Bears, if they do move on from Ryan Pace, they're going to be focused probably on guys with experience, guys who may have been GMs before. And the name I always come back to is Rick Smith, the former Houston Texans GM. This guy is as classy and as proven as they come, an excellent drafter, J.J. Watt, Deshaun Watson, DeAndre Hopkins, Dwayne Brown, Brandon Brooks. I mean, the guy finds frontline talent year after year after year. He knows how to build an organization on both sides of the ball. He ran the Texans for over a decade, and the fact that they fell apart shortly after he left, that's probably not a coincidence. So if the Bears are going to move on from Ryan Pace, I'm really hoping that they give Rick Smith a look because he's everything that they could want in a GM. He's non-controversial. He's experienced. He knows how to build a championship caliber roster, and he'll inherit a quarterback in Justin Fields. So that's something that you're going to want to look towards once the offseason arrives. If Ryan Pace is out, they're probably going to seek somebody with experience, and I hope it really starts with Rick Smith.
Well said. Rick Smith is one of my favorite candidates for that role. So, I would love to see him back. It's unfortunate how his time ended in Houston.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, certainly. I've heard a lot about him in the last couple of weeks too on sports radios and things like that. Seems to be a hot commodity that would make his way back into the NFL if the opportunity of overseeing an entire operation would present itself. So obviously
he doesn't want to get undercut like he was last time.
Right.
I don't blame him.
And the Bears probably going to be looking for that this offseason. So we will see. Bears and Cardinals on Sunday. I got the Cardinals. Drew's got the Cardinals. Eric has the Cardinals. Shouldn't be a surprise. They're the number 1 team in the NFL right now. I think
so naturally the Bears are going to blow them out, right?
Hey, I'll take it.
I'll take it too,
be a good win. Yeah, I mean, Bears, again, no first-round pick. They're not playing for positioning at this point. Exactly. So, you're playing for wins. If I had to put my money on it right now, I think Andy Dalton will start. We don't know. We'll get the full injury report tomorrow. Big one to look at is Roquan Smith. If Kyler Murray does play, that's going to be a tough matchup without Roquan Smith. You're really going to want to have him back. We'll see if that hamstring holds up. But we handled a lot tonight. You can go ahead and watch us back where you can go ahead and follow us on Twitter and watch the full video on Sports Mockery, the Twitter page, Facebook page, and YouTube page. You can also watch it on the Club Dub page as well. Follow us on Twitter. You see all of us right there. Any final notes, guys, before we get on out of here? I'm out of drinks, so I think we're out of time. But
I got a question for you guys.
Yeah, what's up?
If the Bears beat the Cardinals on Sunday, how much of our next episode are we talking down Bears fans who think Matt Nagy's starting to save his job again?
Oh, boy. I don't think it'll be the Cardinals game that does it. If they somehow beat the Cardinals and Packers, then we might have to talk Bears fans off the ledge at that point.
Yeah, can we? Dude, there's no way Nagy's coming back, right? I don't even want to put that. This offense can't score any points. I don't think 2 games is saving his job. I'm just going to say it. I hope they win them both.
Packers at Lambeau.
Well, that's true. But if they beat those 2 teams, look at the rest of their schedule. All teams that are below 500.
Yeah,
you got the Vikings,
Giants,
who they've really played well against the past several years under Nagy. You got the Giants, who are, the Giants. And then you've got, who am I missing? Seahawks, I think. And
they look terrible.
They're bottoming out. It's crazy. So if they can get by these next 2 games, you can't help but think maybe they can make a run.
That would be hilarious. I would just
this NFL season.
Well said, Chris. Enough. Well said.
Yeah, this NFL season. It's been a drunk one as it is, but we appreciate everybody tuning in. Eric, Drew, and Kevin, this is Club Dub Podcast presented by SportsMarker.com. We'll talk to you next time.